Today we're going to learn to convert between grams, moles, and atoms. For example, how many atoms are in 10.13 grams of copper? So it gives you grams, asks for atoms. In these problems you always start with the number and unit and chemical given to you in the problem. So we're going to start with the 10.13 grams of copper. It's important to write down the unit and the chemical so that we can make sure our units cancel out. Make sure that we're not making any mistakes. Next, whatever unit you have goes right on the bottom of a fraction. That's so it cancels out. And in these problems, we're always going to be converting between from what we have to moles or vice versa. So it's always going to be going from moles or to moles. In this problem, we're not starting with moles, so we better convert to moles. I'll call these problems the mole highway because you're always running over the mole. So we'll convert to moles of copper on the top, and then the number that goes with grams is always found on the periodic table. So you look at copper, and at the bottom it says the average molar mass, that's 63.55. The number that goes with moles in these problems when you're going grams to moles is always 1, because you're using the molar mass, which is the mass of 1 mole. Now we don't have atoms yet, so we're going to do another fraction. And whatever unit we have here always goes on the bottom of the next fraction to cancel out some moles of copper. And the number that goes with moles in these problems is always 1. And then on the top, we'll convert to atoms of copper. The number that goes with atoms is the number of atoms in 1 mole, which is Avogadro's number. So you need to memorize that it's 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd atoms is the number of things in a mole. So then on your calculator, well, first you should check and make sure all the units cancel out, except for what you want. And then in your calculator, everything on the top you multiply, anything on the bottom you divide. So I'd say 10.13 times 1 times 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd, and then divide 63.55, divide by 1. Next example. Convert 5 times 10 to the 24th atoms of aluminum to grams. So what number are we going to start with? The number given to us in the problem. So 5 times 10 to the 24th atoms of aluminum. Now we're going to multiply by a fraction. What unit goes on the bottom to cancel out? Well, whatever unit we have, which is atoms of aluminum. And what are we going to convert to? Moles, because in these problems we're always starting with or going to moles. So then what number goes with moles? Always 1 in these problems because we're using the number of atoms in a mole or the mass of a mole. Then what's the number that goes with atoms? Always 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. Next, whatever unit's right here, we'll put on the bottom of the next fraction to cancel out if we're not done. We're not done with this problem because we don't have grams yet. So then moles of aluminum go on the bottom. Grams of aluminum go on the top to give us what we want. The number that goes with moles is always 1. Where do I find the grams number that goes with grams? It's on the periodic table. So that's 26.98. On your calculator, well, first again, check that everything cancels out except for the unit you want. And then on your calculator, anything on the top you multiply. So 5 times 10 to the 24th times 1 times 26.98. And then anything on the bottom you divide. So divide 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd, divide by 1. Also mention when you divide by a number with an exponent like this one, make sure you use the exponent key on your calculator instead of just typing in times 10 to the 23rd, because if you say divide 6.022 and then you say times, your calculator will multiply it as if it were in the numerator. So kind of a roadmap for these problems. You can go grams to moles to atoms, or atoms to moles to grams. So you're always going from or to moles. If you're going from grams to moles, multiply by 1 mole over the grams from the periodic table. If you're going moles to atoms, multiply by 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd atoms over 1 mole. And then the reverse are the inverses of those fractions. So there's only really 2 steps in these problems, and there's always the same. You just need to remember, cancel out your units, the number of grams you get from the periodic table, number of atoms is 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. Hope this helped.